Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Women's Soccer Show. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Amy.
And Amy is joining us again this week, 2 weeks in a row. Allie gets a full 2 weeks off. Good for Allie, but better for us because we get to talk NWSL. It's back after the international break. But before we get into all of it, because it was a big weekend to bring us back, a new celebration from La Bonta, a little dirty dancing shout out. It almost tops the twerking one. It was the first ever weekend in NWSL history with over 100,000 fans in attendance across the board in the entire league. They hit 110,845 people in attendance. Woof. And that includes over 35,000 at Wrigley Field. It was huge. We're going to talk about the whole weekend. But first and foremost, I want to talk about quickly Copa 71, the documentary film, the movie. Amy, you watched it. We've talked about it on this podcast because it wasn't available in the US when we first talked about it. It's available now in the US. We'll get into those details later for those of you listening. We'll tell you how to get it. Maybe, Amy, you can do that now. But you watched it. I haven't seen it yet. I'm going to watch it tonight. I want to hear your thoughts.
That's why we should definitely watch it. What a great documentary. So well done. I appreciated every single part of it. There wasn't a part where sometimes when you're watching a film, you can like scroll on your phone a little bit, get distracted. There wasn't a part where I was distracted. I just wanted to watch the whole thing. And eye-opening that we didn't even know this happened. So much misogyny. Obviously, we know FIFA is ran by men and has been ran by men for a very long time, specifically white men. And FIFA really didn't want this competition to take place. It basically piggybacked on the Mexican World Cup, the Men's World Cup in 1970. They had the stadia, and the organizers had an idea where they were going to use the women's game to make profit for them, which is basically what they did. They invited 6 nations, which were Mexico, Argentina, England, were in one group. And then the second group was France, Italy, and Denmark. And those 6 teams played kind of like a round robin in their groups. And then the teams that finished top went through and they ended up playing a World Cup final. But the stories along the way are the most important part of this. It's not really so much about the football. I mean, there's some great scenes in there where they've sold out the Azteca on numerous occasions, especially for the Mexico games. It's just wonderful to see that people were going out to watch these games in 1971. It was kind of funny at the beginning when they interviewed Brandi Chastain because she didn't even know this happened. And she thought, obviously, that the World Cup that she played in was the first ever World Cup, and the pioneers.
1991.
The pioneers, and it was eye-opening for her to realize that they weren't. And Serena Williams and Venus Williams are the executive producers of this, and Alex Morgan is also involved. It's just a really great film, well done, and the people they interviewed, the players they interviewed, are just a delight to hear from, and their experiences and how they are really the pioneers. Those are the ones who set the standard, and talking about how women's football was banned and how FIFA basically threatened any football federation that had a women's program. If they didn't, disband it, they would be punished, they would be fined, they would be competitions would be taken away from their countries, they wouldn't get qualification spots. So we've come such a long way, and I think for anybody to appreciate where we are now, you really have to watch this film to understand that.
So it was released first in England and it finally made its way here. In 1971, there was a Women's Soccer World Cup that was basically written out of the history books, and this is them bringing it back into it. I didn't know about it. You saying Brandi Chastain didn't know about it. I feel like the majority of people had never heard of this. Had you until this came out?
No, I hadn't heard of it either. But the main reason we haven't heard of it is because it's not a FIFA sanctioned World Cup. And as we know, all the World Cups are FIFA World Cups. This is still not a FIFA World Cup. So it's not in the history books. Nobody talked about it, especially FIFA. They wouldn't dare talk about it because they didn't want it to happen. So this is definitely the forgotten World Cup. And none of these women got paid for this tournament either.
No surprise there. I mean, there's still women not getting paid to play in the World Cup. So in 1971, very much not surprised, sadly.
Yeah, it's not surprising, but also they made so much money off of this competition that for the players not to receive anything was poor. And there's a part in it where the Mexican players threatened to go on strike, and you should watch it to understand that a little bit more. But yeah, this is a really, really great documentary, and I appreciated everything about it.
So we will, if you're listening and you're like, how do I watch this? First things first, we will put a link in our bio, on our Instagram bio. If you go to Instagram at the WOSO, WOSO show, we'll put a link right there if you want, or you can Google. It's made by Jolt, Jolt, Jolt Films, Copa 71, and it should pop up. Essentially, you can go to their website and make a donation. You don't have to make a donation, but it's kind of like their version of saying, hey, can you pay for a ticket to see this movie? And you can choose however much money from 0 to, I don't think there's a limit, to basically own the movie for 24 hours. You're renting the movie, or sorry, for 48 hours. Right, Amy? 48 hours?
Yeah, it's 48
you can
hours.
Watch it there.
And then you can, like, if you like it, which you will, then you want to share it with friends. You can also recommend it for friends to watch and send it along. You can pay for a friend to watch it if you want to, which I think is also a great idea. And you have it for 48 hours as well. So you could obviously take it on your phone to somebody's house and stream it to their TV. That's also an option. Yeah, definitely get behind it and support it, because I think it's only available until mid-June. I think the 20th or around
June
there
20th,
yeah, when it goes off. So I'm hoping that they'll make it available for free by Netflix or something like that, but we'll see. It's a great documentary though. Please watch it.
All right, let's get into it. Before we get into the NWSL, we have to talk about England, because last time we talked about the US first, so now we're going to talk about England first. It's kind of a surprising topic. We've never discussed soccer aid on this podcast before, and I'm not even going to explain why this is worth discussing, other than I saw this and was gobsmacked. Essentially, think we'll get into what soccer aid is first, I suppose. But Ellen White played in soccer aid this past weekend, scored a goal, as Ellen White does. That's not surprising. That didn't gobsmack me. But what left me just like mouth agape was I turned on the sound and I heard that was the first goal scored by a woman in this entirety of soccer aid, which is a big deal in England, happens a lot. How is she the first woman to score in soccer aid? And then we were texting about it, and more stuff was coming out that I was just incredibly shocked by, like how you said there's only one woman on the pitch basically per team the whole time, even though it's a co-ed tournament. I hate to do this, but because you're English, you can describe this better. What is soccer aid? Why is there only one woman on the pitch? And why is Ellen White the first woman to score in the history of this tournament? Because that's horrifying in and of itself.
Okay, so briefly, Soccer Aid is a charity game that happens every year in England, and it's England, a group of players from England who either were ex-internationals or some famous celebrity from England, could be anybody, and versus an international 11, a world 11, and that again is made up of ex-international footballers and world celebrities. Yeah, those
I'm embarrassed to say how I first heard about soccer aid, but I'm going to say it anyways. I heard about it because one of the One Direction boys back in the day was playing. I was like, oh, what's this tournament? I think I want to watch it. Or this game.
You weren't watching it for the football then, Sarah?
Not at that time, no. But I don't imagine anybody does watch it for the actual football of it.
No, I think it's just more of like a fun day out, and people get to go to the stadium, wherever it is. Sometimes it's Stamford Bridge, which is where it was this time. Sometimes it's at Old Trafford. It's been at Manchester City Stadium. But the shocking thing is that in 2019 was the first time that a woman was put onto the roster. So I believe one of the first people was Rachel Yankee to play in this competition. And since then, it's really not changed too much in the amount of females selected to participate. I think that the England team had 3 women on it this year, and I think it was Jill Scott, Karen Carney, and I can't think of who the last person was, but the international 11 had 2. They don't necessarily have to just have one female on the pitch, but usually what happens is the coach only selects one woman to go out there and then makes subs and brings in somebody else at some point. So it's kind of just like co-ed rules here in the US, where if you play, for those people in England, this doesn't exist in England. Co-ed is not a thing. That's not a saying.
Yeah. Well, this is also why I find it fascinating, because in so many ways, like the WSL has come so far, England has come so far even since the Euros, but it's like, it has to be remembered that Euros was a big turning point in England, and there's still a lot of differences that I think at least people in the US would be surprised by, and people in England would be surprised by. Like what you just said, it makes more sense that there's only one woman, generally speaking, on the pitch in this quote co-ed game of Soccer Aid, when co-ed soccer is not played across the country there, versus here it's considered normal. But go ahead, you're going to describe how co-ed is played here. That'll rile me up.
We both hate co-ed, so I don't play co-ed, and neither does Sarah, for reasons that we just don't want to play with men, basically. And that's my main rationale for it, because men have no control over themselves.
This is a great conversation honestly for us to have on air. I did a lot of playing co-ed soccer. I got really sick of coming to the field, being constantly placed on the outside mid position, which I don't play, and having to prove myself to every single man on that field that I was a good soccer player just to be passed the ball when they sucked. In short, that's why I don't play co-ed soccer here.
Yeah, we're pushed out to the wings, either like, left wing, right back, left back. Those are the positions that the females tend to occupy in a co-ed league. It's America's way of trying to be inclusive, but it's not. It's just a lot of crap to me, and I don't feel like I can play anywhere near the level I can play when you push me into positions I don't want to play in. And also, why should I sacrifice for a guy?
Right.
Like, you go there. Why can't I play in my position?
Well, one of my final co-ed games, I actually got in a fight that sounded very similar to that.
I've been in plenty of fights with men who, just think it's their divine right to do whatever they want. But there are some teams
might I say, if you're a man listening to this, you're one of the good ones, probably, and we thank you for that. And we're not trying to shit on you. This has just been our experience, and honestly, experience of a lot of women who play co-ed soccer. Yeah. I actually found myself, I reinstated myself into co-ed soccer since I moved out here to San Francisco, for the pure reason of meeting people. And I'm found myself in a good new situation. First time, I'm 32 years old, the first time in my 10 years of playing co-ed soccer that it's like actually a good situation. So the good situations exist, but this is generally speaking how it goes.
Yeah, the good situations do exist. There's a team here in New York that insists on having 5 women and 2 men. So it's the reverse. So
they flip it on its head, yeah.
Right. If you're playing a 7v7, you have to have a minimum. They say the minimum is 2 women, whereas now it's okay. Well, the maximum is 2 men per game. So that's how they do it. So I love that. Yeah, I love that approach. Anyway, back to Soccer Aid. So it's got that kind of feel to it. Yeah, it's got that kind of feel to it where you feel like the women are just included because they have to be. Whereas you're talking about European champions out there who've won more than England men have won in a European sense, because England men have never won the Euros. And so it's kind of embarrassing that you're only putting 1 female out there. And I think it should be a 50-50 ratio, and maybe even more women than men. Who knows? But we've got a long way to go. We've got a lot of work to do. And for people who say women's sports don't sell, that's not the fact anymore. That's not the case. We've seen that from attendances for many sporting events now, women's sporting events. So that's not a leg to stand on for anybody. And congrats to Ellen White for being the first woman to score, and hopefully she won't be the last.
I bet she thought that she was done, making history and making records as a goal scorer, but there was one more that she had to add to the list, and I'm happy she did.
Bring her back for internationals. And Sarah did not want me to talk about England.
I was just about to say, but do you want to comment on something from the international break?
I do. I really do want to comment on this, because
go for it. I think we're moving on.
Yeah, I get my 30 seconds here to say England's first half in France was the best first half of football I've seen from them in a very long time. They were outstanding. They everything they did was correct, and they forced a tempo that France weren't happy with. We played on the front foot. We didn't let France dominate or dictate the play. And it was an England team that I was happy to see, really prove a point to people who were kind of, well, they might not qualify, blah, blah, blah. And we knew that they had this in them, and they knew that
to
too.
People are so pointed at me.
No, not just you, because people have been complaining about England, and even people because we're holding them to a higher standard now, right? When you win the Euros and when you finish second in the world, these are the standards you're going to be held to, and that's good. That's what you want to be held to, but also it's a lot of pressure. But we know they can deliver, and Russo delivered one of the best performances I've seen from a number 9 in a while. A goal, hold-up play. The hold-up play was outstanding, bringing people into play. I just thought she was brilliant.
Let's talk NWSL. It is back after the international break, and there is much to discuss. We don't have a singular game of the week. I mean, how could we? 7 games. And I think what we're going to do is just try to fit in as much as we can into the time we have in this episode, because honestly, we could probably talk for 20 minutes about each of these 7 games. We're not going to do that. But what we are going to do is start with Portland versus North Carolina Courage. Portland came out on top 1-0, and we have to start with this game because it's fun to kick it off with a game that had 2 red cards. And I think the hottest topic coming out of the NWSL this past weekend is the second yellow card resulting in the red that was given to Sophia Smith for time wasting from the bench. If you haven't seen it, Sophia Smith was on the bench. This was in like the 10th minute of stoppage time. So 100th minute, maybe 101st minute, doesn't matter. She was on the bench. They're only up 1-0. The ball rolls over to the bench, kind of crawls down and pushes it underneath the bench and then crawls under the bench, kind of gets it. It was time wasting. The referee saw it and definitely awarded her. In my opinion, if I'm the referee, I'm like, hey, I'm so sorry. I have to do this. That was very clearly time wasting. Was it hilarious? Absolutely. Is the repercussion feeling kind of huge in that now with this red card, she won't play in the next weekend's rivalry game versus Seattle? Yeah, that feels a little harsh for what was honestly just a hilarious joke. But it had to happen. That was a yellow card. What do you think, Amy?
Yeah, it was a yellow card. No matter what they tried to play it off as, it's just a joke. It's trying to be funny.
It was a joke. It was hilarious, but it was
it's
also
a joke,
time wasting.
It is time wasting, but also North Carolina doesn't find it funny, I'm sure, when they're trying to equalize. So the first yellow card, she kicks the ball away. Dumb yellow card also. So you've been suspended for 2 really stupid bookings, and you're going to miss the next game. And as their best player, it's really disappointing because they've been on a really good run. And I would just expect better of an international who's, played in major competition now. And I don't know, it felt silly. It just felt silly. The whole thing felt ridiculous. And I think that when she looks back on it, this will be a learning experience for her. And I'm sure that no matter how much the manager comes to her defense, he's obviously going to be annoyed at the situation too. And will probably say, hey, we could do a little bit better next time. Let's not do that. We're, like you said, there's 10 minutes of added on time. I thought the game got a little bit chippy towards the end and the referee was handing out a lot of cards. But when you're that close to seeing it out, it just feels like that wasn't necessary.
I agree. And this isn't something that, I feel like young players get berated to an endless degree when they do something stupid. And it's always a big conversation point or whatever. I don't think this has to be that. I do think it was objectively funny. I agree. Probably North Carolina didn't think it was objectively funny. But when you're seeing one of the top forwards in the world crawling around underneath the bench with the ball, it's kind of funny. This Golden Boot race, we weren't going to talk about it, but it is worth mentioning some of these statistics. Sophia Smith with 9 goals in 11 games played. Barbara Banda with 8 goals in 8 games played. And Chawinga of Kansas City, 7 goals in 12 games played. Those are some crazy statistics at the top. And I love that 2 out of 3 of them are not U.S. women's national team players.
Oh, I'm loving the African nations coming through, like really proving that they're worthy of being on this world stage. And for people who haven't heard of them before, now getting the exposure that they deserve, being at, European clubs before, or lesser teams that don't get the, the potential publicity, being on the national teams that they're on. These 2 are phenomenal forwards. Barbara Banda just makes the game look easy. Everything really about it is just seamless. I watch her and I'm like, how is the ball just stuck to your feet? And you can change direction, you can score with your head, you can score with your feet, you set people up. All round, brilliant.
Yeah, she makes it look easy. Barbara Banda, of course, the Zambian international, and Chawinga, the Malawi international. If you have not heard of her, that's probably why. But if you've been watching the NWSL, you've probably heard of her. All right. Obviously, it wasn't just Portland and Sophia Smith. North Carolina were a part of this game as well. They took the 1-0 loss. North Carolina, one of 2 teams with a negative goal differential right now that are still above the playoff line. It's them and Chicago. And I do think that is an interesting thing when you look at the table and you look at all of the teams that are quote unquote doing well, the teams that if the season ended right now, they would make the playoffs. And they're all in the positive goal differential, having scored more than they've allowed, with the exception of Chicago and North Carolina. North Carolina is just one of the most interesting topics to discuss simply because of their legacy in this league and how long it feels like it's been since they've been on top. Amy, what did you take about North Carolina out of this game?
I thought they competed really well in this game. I don't think there was a lot between the 2 teams. And North Carolina's away form is very poor, which is why we're seeing them struggling in that goal differential category. Their home form is far superior. When I look at North Carolina, the first thing that strikes me is I'm not talking about the playing personnel or style of football or anything like that. I'm talking about where they play. I'm talking about Wake Med Soccer Park. It's probably the poorest facility in the league. Now, I'm not saying that the grass itself is fantastic, a well-maintained pitch, but in terms of the product we're putting out there for fans, we're looking at Chicago. They're hosting a game at Wrigley Field, right? And most of these teams are playing in soccer-specific stadiums that are designed for the men's teams, but now they're being invited to play in these arenas, and we're bringing in crowds in, and we're still looking at North Carolina and saying, okay, you're playing a college complex where the seats are made of metal, they're bleachers, and I don't know, it just gives me this vibe of they're not on the level of the new teams. We were talking about the new teams, we'll say in air quotes, but the newer teams that have come into this league and invested, the KCs, even the Orlandos in their stadium. It screams to me that they're not on the same level. And as a team that's won this league so many times, why? What's going on there where we're not moving to a better stadium? Is there enough soccer-specific stadia in North Carolina that can host this? I don't know personally because I don't live there and I'm not privy to that. But I think we should do better with that side of it.
It is almost like the rest of the league leveled up around North Carolina, both on the field and in terms of off the field facilities, etc. I mean, Gotham FC, formerly Sky Blue, used to play in God knows where, unable to access. Now, it feels like everybody else has kind of leveled up and North Carolina haven't, because they used to be the team with a great home field advantage. You don't want to go into North Carolina, mainly because of the fans. And I agree with you. You look at their record this year, really not just their record, but you look at their schedule and their results. And since March 16th, where they scored 5 goals, they've only had one singular game where they were able to score more than 1 goal. They've either scored 1 or none in every single game since then, except for 1. And when you think about it that way, it's not really their defense that's breaking down, because more often than not, they've been able to hold teams to 1-2 goal games. They just can't score. And that's where they're lacking. All right. Talking about goal differential, I want to move on and quickly talk about Gotham FC. You're sitting here in a Gotham FC shirt. We both are very familiar with Gotham, having attended many, many a games in our day. Gotham FC, another one with a very strange goal differential. When you look at them, they have only scored 12 goals this season. To put that in perspective, Kansas City have scored 31. Gotham FC, however, have only allowed 8 goals across this entire season so far, across 11 games. And a lot of that, I think, let's just start here. Gotham took on Angel City. It was Pride Night at Red Bull Arena in New Jersey. Gotham won 2-1. It was a huge turnout, and Ann-Katrin Berger was the star of the show.
She definitely was. What a performance. All round, great goalkeeping performance. She made some good saves. She's been really good with her feet and her distribution. Her back four looked comfortable with her, which is a huge plus. You want your back four to be comfortable with your goalkeeper because that breeds confidence throughout the team. She's just night and day difference to the consistency we've seen at Gotham, the lack of consistency, we'll say, in the goalkeeping position. They've rotated through too many goalkeepers for my liking. And now it feels like they found somebody who is solid and isn't going to get rotated in and out. And the back four, I know we've got some injuries in the back four, but that seems to be a little bit more cohesive as well with the goalkeeper now. And it seems like Juan Carlos is now figuring out what his best formation looks like and what players fit into which holes and when to play them. And we saw a very front foot attack in Gotham without their front three that won them the title last year, because Purse is injured, Williams is injured, and also no Esther, just not selected in the first 11, but wasn't a problem because it was a good performance from Gotham. There were some moments, yes, where there were some transitional moments where Angel City looked threatening and they did obviously equalise, but I never thought that Gotham weren't going to win this game. I thought that there was always a next gear for them to go into, and Neely Martin in the middle, kind of an unsung hero because of all the new signings. We talked about the new signings. I think she's been great in the last. I would say Gotham is started to find their foot in the last 3 games now. Yeah, and they look more entertaining as well, which is important because people then want to watch you play. Before, my criticism was, I don't want to watch them, they're boring. Now it's like, oh, okay, there's actually something going on here, and they could get it right. And if they do get it right, then they could repeat what they did last year, but more convincing, where they don't finish in the last place of the playoffs and then win it.
It is hard for people to remember that Gotham FC were honestly not fun to watch for the majority of last year, because the end of last year was so damn exciting that it kind of overtakes everything else. But when you're at Red Bull Arena for half the games that season and Gotham are not entertaining until the final game of the regular season and then all through the playoffs, you do remember. Neely Martin, you said she's an unsung hero. This year, she's an unsung hero. For those of you listening, you will probably remember her as the field player who went into goal twice, both times in San Diego, one time literally during the final. They sold a Neely Martin kit. Actually, it sold out online, and I absolutely loved a Neely Martin goalkeeper kit. Sorry, sold out online. Absolutely epic. I mean, Neely Martin has been part of the backbone of Gotham since the back half of last year. She really solidified her spot. She got her chance because of a lot of injuries, and she took it, and she's held on to it. And she is a huge, huge part of Gotham. And this is part of what makes Juan Carlos Amoros such a great head coach, is because he was never going to toss out what worked last year just because they signed Rose Lavelle, just because they signed Crystal Dunn. He was never going to do that. And that's, I think, part of the struggle that you've been alluding to of them trying to find that form, because he didn't throw everything out, because they've been trying to merge a lot of new people into this system and find what works for everybody. And another person I'm going to call out, Yasmin Ryan. I talked about her a lot last year. She is so big for this Gotham FC team. I thought she had a great game. And final piece, both goals came from Crystal Dunn and Rose Lavelle. Great to see both of them contributing to this team, because they haven't had the chance to do so in the way that I think they would have wanted, fans would have wanted, everybody would have wanted. Both goals coming from those two means a lot. And both of those goals were beautiful. I mean, if that's not a classic Rose Lavelle goal, I don't really know what is.
That was a really nice finish from Lavelle. And we talked about Crystal Dunn last week about how she's probably not going to go to the Olympics, but she's done herself a world of favors this week by scoring the first goal for the US and then scoring the first goal for Gotham. We talked about she needs to be consistently scoring for club. Well, this is a good start to that. And then a big shout out to McCall Zaboni coming back from her ACL tear, first minutes this weekend. Yeah. And I think that she's sort of like taken over the reign from Allie Krieger as, you know, the team mom, and she's obviously the oldest player on the team. So it's good to see her back in there.
The final game we will talk about before we head into Around the World in the back half of this episode, and don't worry, we have more NWSL in the back half of this episode, is the Friday night game on Amazon Prime. By the way, loving Amazon Prime's coverage of the NWSL so far this year, just as a side note. San Diego Wave took on Orlando Pride, ended in a 1-1 draw. I drank 3 shots of tequila and 2 glasses of rosé throughout the course of this game. So,
were you playing a drinking game based on some sort of football?
We'll see how fuzzy my memory is along the lines of what happened throughout this game. But just to start off the bat, this was the one I had circled on my calendar of this is what I'm most excited for of this weekend. You have San Diego Wave, the Shield winners from last year, who have been stumbling kind of for the first half of this season when it comes to their record, but you can't really blame them because of all of the injuries, and we know that they'll find their form at some point. I think they found it here. And then you have Orlando, who are just on top of the world, coming into this game on an 8-game winning streak, having been unbeaten in the course of this entire season so far, still unbeaten, and they're colliding in San Diego. What more can you want if you're an NWSL fan?
It was NWSL After Dark.
It was
a lot of fun. It was a really good game, entertaining to watch. All the key players were there, obviously. We want to see Barbara Bandel. We want to see Alex Morgan. We want to see if Orlando can continue this great run that they're on. And we have to give Seth Hines a lot of credit because he's really done a good job there. And I don't think that gets talked about enough because that team has been, you know, we had all of the clamor around them when Allie Krieger and Ashton Harris first went there, and we thought they were going to be really good. And then obviously Marta, and we know Marta is phenomenal, but she can't do it by herself.
And now they had Alex Morgan at one point too, along with Marta. And with a combination of these two, it's going to be epic.
It didn't work, and I think that finally they found the right coaching fit for them, and he's making all of the right decisions in terms of the personnel he's putting on the pitch, and whatever they're doing in training seems to be really showing. And I think the additions that they've made, Barbara Bander obviously being the standout one, Marta still being there. But they have other players. They have Watt. She's dynamic up front as well. So, and the back line has been pretty consistent, we'd have to say. The only concern for me about Orlando is the goalkeeper. I would say that Morehouse is not inspiring me with confidence.
She came up big in this game.
She did, but she also had some shaky moments where she gave the ball away and they could have scored a second goal. So I think that she needs to be more consistent if they want to win this title outright in the playoffs. I'm not overly convinced about the goalkeeper at this point, but everything else about Orlando is so fun to watch, and I enjoy watching them. Whereas before, I would never have watched a Pride game. I would have been like, nah, turn that off. They're boring. Or they're going to lose. They're going to get battered. The only reason I'd watch it is probably for Marta, but now it's a different story. They're fun to watch, free flowing. They obviously went into San Diego, and you know, a tough, hostile place to go and play. They have a big crowd there and have a great coach in Casey Stoney. And like you talked about, it has been a bit of a fits and starts to the season. Like, you know, it hasn't been consistent for them either. So I don't know why. I can't really pinpoint why they haven't.
I feel like I know why.
Okay, why do you think?
We can't pin it all on injuries, but a lot of it, honestly, it's been a lot of Abby Dahlkemper. She's coming back from the huge back surgery, but she's been in and out. Naomi Girma was injured. She's been in and out. Alex Morgan's been injured. She's been in and out. Jaden Shaw at one point was a little bit injured. She was in and out. And then they add Maria Sanchez, and that's another element. Honestly, I think it's worth just saying that I don't think she's integrated into this team yet. I don't think she's made the impact that San Diego have wanted, that she has wanted. I think she will, but it's a whole new team. It's a whole new system. It takes a while to learn how to play with these players under a new coach. I think it's just been a lot of moving pieces. There hasn't been stability. I think part of what Casey Stoney brings is that stability, especially like down the spine of her teams. That's what really matters. And it just hasn't been there, especially down the spine.
Well, I think
sometimes that you can't control that.
Yeah, well, everybody is dealing with injuries of some kind. I think if your squad depth is there, I don't think it is as much of an issue. And I don't look at San Diego and think, wow, look at that squad depth. I think that their starting 11 is great, but I don't really know about their squad depth and how deep their squad is to contend with. Let's say they had 3 injuries. It seems like that really knocks them back. Whereas somebody like KC, maybe you have 3 injuries, doesn't really phase them as much, I would say.
I agree, but San Diego, because of the squad depth or lack thereof, have been phased. On the flip side, you look at Orlando, and they've been able to really make it work with kind of a makeshift center back with Strom and Sams. They're not used to playing with each other. And I think I need to give credit where credit is due. A name that we haven't mentioned a lot in a while is Morgan Gautreau, holding down that center midfield for Orlando. I think she's a really key piece. You mentioned that. I'm glad you mentioned that this isn't just Barbara Banda, because obviously she's a massive part of this. But Orlando started to right the ship last season. Last season is when I wanted to watch Orlando, and into this season. But the drafting, the work with putting together puzzle pieces one after the other across, 1, 2, 3 years, that's what has made this team. And they've made good moves. And I agree. I think this is huge credit, like you said, to Seb Hines, who's done a really great job as a head coach with this team. Let's go around the world. Around the world to Mexico. Monterrey are your La Liga MX Clausura champions. The first leg of the final belonged to America with a 1-0 win. Game number 2 ended 2-1 in favor of Monterrey, which left the aggregate at 2-2. So the two teams went into penalties, and Monterrey came out on top 4-3 in pens to win the title.
Arsenal and Chelsea women are coming to the US. Woo! Chelsea will play Gotham FC, and Arsenal are set to play a game against the Washington Spirit. They'll also face each other in Washington. Both games will be on August 18th and the 25th.
And finally, the Summer Cup, the NWSL and La Liga MX Femenil announced back in March that all 14 NWSL teams and 6 of La Liga MX teams will compete in games from July 19th through August 2nd. During the Olympic break of the NWSL. This isn't new news, but it is certainly approaching, so get ready.
Have you checked out Total Football Analysis yet? TotalFootballAnalysis.com provides research analysis on loads of football, including the women's game. Want all the stats in one place instead of drowning in a mountain of tabs? Want to explore key matchups and the tactics from both teams? Total Football Analysis provides the stats and analysis to help you learn more about the beautiful game. We have a special discount for listeners of the Women's Soccer Show. At checkout, type WOSO10 to get a full year for just €10. That's €40 of the yearly subscription. Head over to TotalFootballAnalysis.com and type WOSO10 at checkout.
All right, and back to the NWSL, because there's still more to discuss, and arguably we've saved the best for last, although we did kick it off with the Sophia Smith red card, so I'm not sure about that. But we still have a lot to discuss in Utah Royals, in Bay FC versus Chicago at Wrigley Field. So let's start with Utah. This is, I would say, if you look at the NWSL table right now, this is the biggest gap from top to bottom that we have seen in the NWSL in a long time. Top teams in Kansas City and Orlando have 28 points, the Spirit with 27 just behind them. And then you look all the way down at the bottom, and the Utah Royals sit in last place with just 4 points. And it's feeling a little WSL-y. But with that being said, listen, we remember the days where Gotham were sitting down there with like 3 points about halfway through the season. So it's not something new necessarily for the NWSL, but Utah Royals of 2024 are a brand new expansion team this year, and they are at the bottom with 4 points. And we're about the halfway mark of the season. So with one win, 10 losses, and 1 draw, they're now coming off a 1-0 loss to the number 3 Washington Spirit. Is Utah as concerning to you as the record that I just read indicates that maybe it should be? Or is this kind of like it's one of those situations where the record just simply doesn't indicate what these games have been like?
I think it's a little bit of both. I would say that because they're such a new team, they obviously have like first pick in the draft, but the draft is also a lot of collegiate players coming in and they're not experienced at this level. They've got some really talented young players who've come off of the draft, but they're not ready yet for this level. And you can see that they will be ready for it. And maybe next year, the year after, they'll be fully fledged professionals and they'll be used to this league. But right now, this is a big adjustment for them. This is Amy Rodriguez's first head coaching job. And I think she's learning a lot about herself, about her team. And I don't think they're bad to watch. They're not super entertaining, but they're not getting blown out either week in, week out. The games are close. They've shored things up defensively. They brought in, I would say the biggest signing they brought in was Amadine Henry, and she's at the tail end of her career, we will say.
Yeah.
But still a great player and somebody who has given them a little bit more of a backbone in the midfield. But I just think this is such a brand new team that it'd be unfair to completely criticize them at this stage. I think that they need at least 2 seasons in this league to be something competitive. And I don't think that sacking Rodriguez is the answer to this problem, either, if we were going to say that. But I'm not saying you would. But yeah, I think that people obviously jump to that conclusion immediately. It's the manager's fault. It's the coach's fault.
Yeah.
We got to get rid of them, which is not the case. I think they need to add some more quality to the squad, some more international quality to the squad. And next year will be another building year for them. I don't think we're going to see them win the NWSL for at least 3 or 4 years, if that was their aim, which is what everybody's aim is at this level. And so I'm not super concerned. I was more concerned the year before when Gotham finished bottom, because Gotham is an established team and they weren't just an expansion team that were coming in. So to me, no, not concerned. Let's let them continue this season. Like we said, they're not a lot of blowouts, and they probably will get a couple more wins along the way. And then next year they'll be stronger. They'll bring in more international quality. The only thing is, I feel like I don't know if Utah is a place that a lot of people want to go and play football in as a place itself in America. And you guys have mentioned this before on the podcast about their sponsorship deal and how the America first across the front, and how it doesn't scream like a place where I would want to go and play football personally. And a lot of, as a queer person, there is so many queer folks in women's football. It's not really a place where you like inspired to go and play. So I think there needs to be a little bit of a culture shift there too.
Yeah, it hasn't been the brightest first season back. There have been a lot of little stumbling blocks just like that. But I'm glad you mentioned, this is a new team. There's no cause for concern. If I were them, I wouldn't make big changes like firing a head coach or even the GM, even though I don't necessarily think that a lot of it doesn't appear to me that there was a lot of strategic thought behind putting puzzle pieces together when assembling this team. But you got to start somewhere. And a big factor that we haven't discussed yet is we can look at Utah compared to Bay FC, or we can look at Angel City and San Diego compared to Racing Louisville, because they came in back to back, obviously Racing 1 year before the Angel City and San Diego. But listen, Utah Royals do not have the deep pockets that Bay FC have. Bay FC can go out and buy the players that they needed to buy to be the team that they are and put the puzzle pieces together. And that's a lot harder to do when you are putting puzzle pieces together in an expansion draft and a college draft, which is basically what Utah did, because they don't have those deep pockets to go get the stars. And so it is, like you said, it's going to be a while for Utah. I think you're right. But I think it needs to be, there's a little less leeway in my mind. Like I give Racing Louisville a lot of time and a lot of runway to get it right. If you're the Utah Royals and you're coming back into this league and you have, for those of you who don't know, that the fee that they had to pay to join the league was so much less than a BFC, because BFC was new and Utah Royals are not necessarily new. For you to come back into this league, you have to come back in and make a splash and make an impact in some kind of positive way. And so I do give them a little bit less of a runway for that. And I do hope that they make some changes in the next couple of years, but it's not concerning yet. Let's move it along. BFC went to Chicago, and not just Chicago, everybody. BFC went into Wrigley Field. The Red Stars hosted BFC in the iconic Wrigley Field. 35,038 fans turned up to see this game. How do you feel about this? I love that it was at Wrigley.
I've got mixed emotions about it.
I really get it. I know where you're coming from, because I saw some videos of like views from people's seats. It's never great to convert a baseball stadium into a soccer stadium, but I make an exception for Wrigley because I would go there any day, anytime. It is iconic.
I mean, it is an iconic baseball stadium. And obviously we've worked so hard for the women's game and actually just soccer in general in this country to be at a serious level where we're not playing on baseball fields anymore. It felt like it was progress in one area, regression in another area. And even the camera angles, like you're talking about seating angles, some of the cameras were obstructed by wiring. I don't know if you watched the game, but you can see there was a wire that just ran along the touchline, and that was kind of annoying too. But let me not poo on this too much, as we're talking about the record attendance, and a lot of fans came out in the rain. It was raining, and I think that shows how dearly they need some sort of stadium in the center of Chicago.
I was going to say, the benefit of this is, the Red Stars usually play at SeatGeek Stadium, which is in Bridgeview, Illinois. Certainly not in the heart of Chicago like Wrigley is. And that's why I just love it this way, that they were at Wrigley. But I agree. I think this is 35,000 fans turned up to Wrigley Field. If you can find a way to play closer to the city, I think your attendance is going to get higher. It's the same thing. I hate to mention Gotham again, but it's the same thing that happened with Gotham FC. It's a lot easier, as much of a pain in the butt is to get to Red Bull Arena. It's not as hard as it was to get to Rutgers.
So what's the alternative? Because what you've done is you've built your men's pro team stadium outside of the city. Or are we saying, let's host more games at this baseball stadium? I don't think that's a good idea personally from the dimensions of the field. They have the Bears Stadium, which is in central Chicago also, but that's a huge stadium, and we're asking a lot if we're going to fill that. So if we're saying that they need a stadium in central Chicago, then it's going to have to be a women's soccer specific stadium, which is great news, but somebody needs to fund that.
Or just better transportation out to SeatGeek. Like when, maybe that's a great stadium. Maybe you just need to get some shuttles. I don't know. But anyways, we've gotten so off topic. We're here to talk about Chicago Red Stars hosting BFC. Other than the weird camera angles, I do want to get into this game. BFC won 2-1. And look, maybe you can speak to more of Chicago, because I think we need to talk about them. We haven't talked about them a lot. I can speak very heavily to BFC because I've been following them very closely this year. BFC has been that team that truly could have won all of their games that they've played in. They've had bad first 10s and bad last 10s minutes, and that's what's killed them. And Tess Bodie spoke after the game and said, look, this is kind of like the halfway point for us, and we don't ever want to lose to a team twice. We want to fix our mistakes from that first time and turn it around. And Chicago beat BFC the first time around 2-1. BFC comes back out, turns it around. They are solving problems that were big problems for them early on. And that's what you want to see from a brand new team. Bay FC are honestly, for me, like they're the mold that you want from an expansion team. And I have so much faith, honestly, that now in this back half of the season, they're going to just climb and keep climbing up this table.
That's the case for them because they are an entertaining team to watch. I do enjoy watching them. I think you're right about what you said about they were just inconsistent. So they were either inconsistent defensively or they were inconsistent going forward. And now they're finding that blend that's been successful for them. Winning away games is crucial, as we can see from Chicago and also North Carolina not winning enough away games. But this also felt kind of like an away game for Chicago too, because they've been moved to a different stadium that isn't the same dimensions, doesn't feel the same, doesn't have the same fan atmosphere, very different. Can also be overwhelming, 35,000 people in a baseball stadium versus, they're probably getting around, 9,000-10,000 where they are. Yeah. So
there's an ivy on the brick wall. What's happening?
Yeah, it's just, obviously, it kind of felt weird for them. It looked like they were out of sorts also. They didn't feel comfortable. And they didn't look convincing at any point during this game, Chicago. Bay FC played really well. They counterattacked really well. And they looked like the home team versus Chicago. Chicago, I thought having Nair back was a big plus for them. She's been out with I think a thigh injury, they said. And she's trained this week. She's obviously a massive plus and is their captain and their leader. And I thought Chicago had started the season pretty well too, and they gave me some hope that they were going to be good. But with Lorne Donaldson also did tremendous job in the World Cup with Jamaica, so I was excited to see what he could do with Chicago this year. And I think they started well, like I said, but now this game kind of reminded me of like some old school 1990s football where you just boot the ball forward and hope for the best. There was no real way to progress the ball for Chicago. They weren't playing it through the lines. There was no possession-based football.
Because of the baseball stadium, the field was smaller than both teams were used to, and I think that affected a lot. But I agree. I think Chicago started the season really well, and they've lost their form a little bit in recent games. I mean, they lost the last 3 games that they played. They lost to Gotham FC 2-1. They lost to Racing Louisville 1-0, and then they just lost to Bay FC 2-1. So something's flipped for them. Something isn't clicking. What is it?
Well, they've got to solve the problem. So like you said, okay, the pitch is smaller. So what? Both teams are playing on a small pitch. It doesn't really matter. Yeah. Bay FC solved this problem better than Chicago did in a lot of ways. And I think that just being one-dimensional like they were, trying to find Swanson. Swanson wasn't really in the game at all. Hocking scored late on, but she again was kind of fits and starts. So it wasn't free-flowing football from Chicago or anything that I could be like, wow, there were some great passages of play where they deserved to score. But I think Bay FC deserve to win this game, like I said before. And if they can continue to build on the momentum and be consistent, there's no reason why they can't make a push for the playoffs.
I agree. And I actually think the same about Chicago. After, Chicago has been down and out for a couple of years, and they started the season really strong. And when you look at their lineup and you look at their roster, they have the chance to get back to how they started that season and make a push as well. I mean, obviously, Bay FC are sitting a lot lower than Chicago right now in the standings. Chicago's sitting in 6th place, so making a push makes it seem like they're down and out and they aren't going to make it. But you've dropped 3 of your last 3 games. And in the NWSL, you can fall out of contention really quickly. I think, however, Chicago, with the team that they have, they're in a good place right now. All right, we did it. We got through almost everything. If we didn't talk about your team or we didn't talk as much about the game as you wanted, we apologize. We did what we could do, and we hope you enjoyed it. As always, go to the Patreon for extra content, patreon.com/TheWoso Show, and we will be back next week, as always, on Wednesday. And stay tuned because very shortly we're going to have some Olympic coverage news dropping. Of course, we're covering the Olympics. Tournament coverage is my favorite thing to do. International is my favorite thing. So we're doing it. Stay tuned, everybody. And for the Women's Soccer Show, I've been Sarah.
I've been Amy.
Thanks, everybody.
This podcast was edited by Monkey Hill Media. Visit monkeyhillmedia.com for more information.